So I'm Lisa Krauser, and I would like to welcome you all to tonight's Learn and Greet. I am super excited. We've had a really large response to this event, which is Irish Greyhounds to America. So on behalf of the Greyhound Options Board, we'd like to thank you all for joining us. We are really happy to be able to present these events at no cost. But we do want you to know that if you're so inclined, we are certainly willing to accept donations if you're looking to support Greyhound Options mission and our other activities. And we make it easy for you to do that by visiting our website, and that is Greyhound Options, www.greyhoundoptions.org. So at this point, I'm going to introduce our speaker, John Parker, and then he's going to tell us a little bit about himself and then about the history of the Irish Greyhounds to America program. The nuts and bolts and how the dogs get here and how people who are interested in adopting an Irish Grey can make that happen. John, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. I'm really happy to be here tonight. I gave this presentation at the Greyhound Reach the Beach event in Dewey Beach, Delaware in October. And we've got about 3 times the number of attendees for this that we had at Dewey. So I'm very gratified by that. And I hope I can inspire your confidence. They've asked me to tell you a little bit about me. I'm coming to you from Georgia. I've lived here since 1978, and I adopted my first former racing Greyhound in 1994. And became hooked on the breed within a few months of that, and then began volunteering shortly thereafter. The next year tried some lure coursing, got hooked on that. We had a Greyhound club here called the Southeastern Greyhound Club. It was originally started by some show Greyhound folks, and they kind of let it languish. So a bunch of us folks that were adopters joined the club and got it going again. And then in 1998, we started our own adoption group that was then called Southeastern Greyhound Adoption. And we became a chapter of Greyhound Pets of America the following year. So we're now GPA Atlanta Southeastern Greyhound Adoption. It's a bit of a mouthful. And I've done a variety of other things in the Greyhound world. I won't try to go into all those. I do have as my virtual background the logo for a new Greyhound venture we started about a year or so ago called Greyhound Nation. It's a podcast, and we have a new episode about every month and a half. The current episode is an interview of Lee Livengood, who wrote the Dummies Retired Racing Greyhounds for Dummies book, and we'll have a new episode out this week featuring Gary Guccione and Charlie Blanning talking about the greatest racing Greyhounds of all time. So you can catch us anywhere on any of your favorite podcast apps, or if you want to listen to it right on the website, it's www.greyhoundnation.dog. So with that, let's talk about Irish Greyhounds. Irish Greyhounds have been transported to North America by Greyhound enthusiasts for centuries. In the late 1800s, Irish Greyhounds were brought over from their country of origin to compete in hare coursing under rules on the prairies of Kansas and Nebraska, and then the park coursing held near San Francisco. Fast forward about another century, and in the 1960s, Greyhound Hall of Famer Pat Dalton from Ireland pioneered in bringing Irish Greyhounds over from his native Ireland to race at the New England tracks up there around where you folks with Greyhounds Options are. And he also had an active breeding program as well, and he bred a number of his Irish Greyhounds to American Greyhounds, which has resulted in a strong Irish presence in American racing bloodlines today. So now in the 21st century, we've come full circle, and Irish Greyhounds are being transported across the Atlantic to meet a continuing strong demand for former racing greyhounds as pets. So let's first talk a little history about the movement to bring Irish Greyhounds over for rehoming in the U.S. The first organization that history records is a group called, and they're still in existence and still bringing some greyhounds over, called Flying Irish Greyhounds, or FIG. They were the first organization to really formalize importation of Irish Greyhounds as pets. They were founded in 2014 in Canada, and they serve primarily American Greyhound adoption groups in Seattle, Portland, and Santa Rosa, California. They transport greyhounds on what we call the air patron model, which means the greyhounds fly as checked baggage, accompanying a passenger, a human passenger on the aircraft. So that's how they have been doing their importation. That's Flying Irish Greyhounds. So then another group sprung up, which was Flight. Now, it was originally Flight, which stands for, I have to get this right, Finding Loving Irish Greyhound Homes Together. That was founded in 2015, also in Canada. They also originally used the air patron transport model, but in 2021, they added Middle Eastern Salukis to their rehoming mission and added the S to the name of their organization. So now it's Flights, Finding Loving Irish Greyhound Homes Together, and Salukis. So that's Flights. So, enter Greyhound Pets of America. And I can tell you a brief little story about that. This was in 2019, Roy Goray, who was then the president of GPA, reached out to Tina Kelly of the Flights organization in the winter of 2019. You'll recall that this was after the vote in Florida, where the Amendment 13 had passed, and we knew that the Florida tracks were going to be closing at the end of 2020. So the handwriting was on the wall in terms of the availability of American racing greyhounds for adoption. So Roy reached out to Tina because he knew she had lots of contacts in Ireland, and he reached out to me as well. I had some experience flying greyhounds back and forth from England. I have some British Greyhound friends, and we had exchanged dogs from time to time. And that's another story I'll tell another day. But anyway, I had some experience flying personal greyhounds back and forth from England to the U.S. And I had also taken a fairly strong position on social media that even though the American Greyhound availability was going to go low, people could still get greyhounds as pets, and that I predicted that we would be flying over Irish Greyhounds in the not too distant future. So Tina introduced Roy and myself to these two fellows. These are our first contacts with the Greyhound Racing Ireland. It used to be called the Irish Greyhound Board. They changed their name to the Greyhound Racing Ireland. You'll hear me refer to GRI, and that's who it is. They are the national body that regulates and controls greyhound racing in Ireland. They're not a registry the way the NGA is. The Irish Coursing Club acts as the registry of racing greyhounds, but Greyhound Racing Ireland basically runs and controls greyhound racing in Ireland, and they actually own a track or two as well. So the two fellows that we were initially introduced to were, you'll see this fellow on the left, Barry Coleman. He's the Greyhound Racing, he's a full-time employee of Greyhound Racing Ireland, and he's the care and welfare manager. He's in charge of all the rehoming, also all the greyhound welfare issues that come up. And then the fellow on the right was the then chief executive officer, a fellow named Jared Dollard. So we had a conference call in April of 2019 with these two fellows and myself and Rory Goray, and we discussed numbers possibilities. And they said, how many do you think you can rehome a year? How many Irish Greyhounds do you think you can rehome a year? And our answer was, well, how many do you have? And so you can imagine, I don't know if they believed us at first. We actually said we thought we could do as many as they could send us, and I still believe that to be the case. I'm not sure they believed us, but in any event, we got started with a pilot program, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So what do the GRI is Greyhound Racing Ireland. The IRGT is the Irish Retired Greyhound Trust. It's affiliated with the GRI, but not totally controlled by it. Irish Retired Greyhound Trust is a charity. It's kind of our equivalent of a 501c3, and they do a lot of the rehoming activities. So GRI and the IRGT work together. So a lot of people ask, well, what do they pay for? Well, let's talk about that for a little bit. They pay for all the spay neuter, and this is without reimbursement from any American receiving group. So they take care of that cost. All the Irish Greyhounds come to us having had a dental. They get all vaccinations current, and they have to set aside certain of the Irish Greyhounds that they know are going to come to America because they have to have rabies vaccinations 30 days before they fly. They don't. Ireland is a rabies-free country, so they don't routinely vaccinate for rabies in Ireland. So they have to make sure that all the Irish Greyhounds that are kind of tagged for the American program have their rabies 30 days or more before they arrive. And we like to say no hookworms. We kid and say when St. Patrick drove all the snakes out of Ireland, he also drove the hookworms out. So we haven't had an Irish Greyhound come with hookworms yet, conventional or resistant. So that's been good. Let's see here. Let's talk about the numbers, dollars and dogs. So transport costs, this is the big one. Pre-COVID, in 2019, when we first started the program, the cost was about $700 to $900 per Greyhound. That's total. And let's see what I've got next here. Let me back up just a second. In those days, when we first started, the GRI was paying 2/3 of the transport costs, and GPA was paying 1/3 if the receiving group was a GPA chapter. So GPA chapters had no cost, and non-GPA groups had little cost. Well, COVID comes along, and this is what happened. With many fewer flights coming and going between Europe and the United States because of the travel embargoes, the availability of cargo space went way down. And so there was still a good bit of cargo to be sent, not Greyhounds, but just other cargo. And so with less cargo space and more demand for that cargo space, the price just skyrocketed, as you can see here. From 2020 from about March 2020 to September 2021, that was what the cost of flying a Greyhound over was. So we basically just stopped the program. We paused it because nobody could afford that. GRI didn't want to pay that much. Obviously, the groups couldn't pay that much. So we just basically paused the program and we watched the cargo prices as they came down. So post-COVID, October 2021 to the present, that's what it's running about right now, about $1,500 to $2,100 per Greyhound. We hope that comes down a good bit more. We're just waiting and seeing it. The demand for cargo space remains strong. The flights have increased, as you can imagine. Travel has resumed between Europe and the United States, but Unfortunately, the demand for cargo space has stayed high, and so the price has not come down to its pre-COVID point yet. Let me back up just a little bit and talk about what happened after when we resumed the program again. Initially, when we resumed in 2021, October of 2021, the GRI said, "Well, we can pay. This is a little more than we were banking on it staying at the pre-COVID levels, so we can't pay it 2/3 anymore, but we can pay a half." So the receiving groups were paying the other half, and then GPA went to instead of automatically paying a share for GPA chapters, they were allowing GPA chapters to apply for a grant from GPA National Treasury to pay a certain amount of that transport cost. So then what happened in March of 2020, they had a new CEO. GRI had a new CEO come along, and we had a conference call with Barry and the new CEO, a lady, the first female GRI CEO, and they just wanted to kind of introduce the new CEO and have us talk to her a bit. And one of the pieces of news we got was basically saying we've kind of exhausted our budget for this year, for 2022, in what we can pay for transport. So we can no longer pay 50%. Now we have plenty of Greyhounds. We're still happy to send them already vetted at no cost to the receiving groups, but and we can send them to anybody that's willing to pay 100% of the transport costs. So we didn't know what that was going to mean for the program, but surprisingly, most of the receiving groups said, we'll manage, we'll pay 100%, and we'll just recoup as much of that as we can through increased adoption fees. So we lost a couple, 3 groups, but that was about it. Everybody else said, we'll continue to pay 100% of the cost. So what happens is GRI fronts the money, so to speak, for the transport costs, and then invoices the receiving groups. We've had a little help with the 1,500 to 2,100 now, because the dollar has come up to be much stronger on the euro, and they're now more like in the $1,500 to $1,800 to range per Greyhound. That includes everything. That's the transport from Ireland to England where they fly. We'll talk about that in a second. It includes the crates, and so it's an all-in charge on a per Greyhound basis. So what did the adoption groups do to take care of that additional transport cost? Well, here's the current range, and you can see it's a fairly broad range, $750 to $2,500. I think most groups are in the, say, $900 to $1,200. That's kind of the median, but that's where the adoption fee ranges are right now, between $750 and $2,500, depending on the group and their financial situation and their fundraising ability. So how many have we transported so far? Well, we have several periods to talk about here. In 2019, that's when the pilot program began, and you folks in Massachusetts will be happy to know that Boston was the first destination for Irish Greyhounds. We thought it was particularly fitting, given the amount of Irish immigration in the earlier days of the country to Boston, that we would send the first group of Irish Greyhounds to Boston for rehoming. So from 2019, from September to December, we transported 11 Greyhounds. And then in 2020, January to March, we transported 44 Greyhounds, and we shut down in March because of COVID and the fewer number of, the cargo rate spiked, and the fewer number of aircraft flying between the United States and Europe. So my group, Atlanta, got one of the last groups in. We got them in right before the door closed. We picked back up in October of 2021. Rates had come down, and we thought we could, get it going again. So we had a really good end of the end of 2021, we brought over 135 Greyhounds, and we had a much broader distribution system. We'll talk about that in just a second. 2022, we've really kicked it in, and we've through the end of December, we've still got 3 transports left this month. But through the end of December, we will have transported 560 Greyhounds from Ireland to various airports in the U.S. and Canada. This is a pretty good number, considering we had to stop for a couple of months in everywhere but New England, basically, because of the summer heat. The American Airlines, one of the airlines that flies the dogs, has a hard and fast rule that if it's going to be 85 degrees at any time on the day of arrival in the arrival airport, they will not board the dogs in England. So that's we had about a 2-month hiatus, so we got 560 in despite that. So there we go. There's your total to date: 750 Greyhounds from the beginning of the program. And I think probably in 2023, if all goes well, I suspect we'll top 700 Greyhounds transported. We shall see. Okay, currently participating adoption groups. This is a map showing you where a lot of the groups are, and as you can see, they predominate in the east, but we've got a group in Seattle. We've got Dallas, the Greyhound Adoption League of Texas, and Greyhounds Unlimited. They get Greyhounds there. We've got a lot of groups up in the Eastern Seaboard, and Florida is they were the hotbed of Greyhound racing. Now they're the hotbed of Irish Greyhound adoption. They have 3 groups there, and they regularly get in almost once a month about 12 Greyhounds, which is the max you can get on one flight. So they've really done a great job down there in Florida. There's a high demand, obviously, from when the tracks were there. So we're pleased that they've been able to do that. But as you can see, we've got a couple more groups in the South. There's the Atlanta group. And then we've got a number of groups, including Greyhound Options, up there in the Northeast. Let's see, where's my... Okay, I need to flip over to the next. There we go. The nuts and bolts. How do we get those dogs from Ireland over here? Well, it's quite a story, I can tell you. Let's talk a little bit about the steps that we take. So first thing you obviously have to do is schedule the transports. We schedule these about 6 to 8 weeks out. And we have a working Facebook group called GPA Irish Greyhounds to America program. And that's where we do all our conversations about scheduling and so forth. And then we have 3 staff members of the Irish Retired Greyhound Trust and Greyhound Racing Ireland, who Barry Coleman, whose picture you saw before, he really does a lot of the heavy lifting. He helps with the scheduling. He's in touch with the pet transport agent. The airlines require you to use a pet transport agency to do the booking, to make sure the dogs are in the right crates and so forth. So this is a working group. It's not a discussion group. We occasionally have people asked to join who have adopted an Irish Greyhound, but we say, no, sorry, you can't join just to see what's going on. These need to be representatives of the authorized receiving group. So that's where we do all our scheduling on the Facebook group. Then the government paperwork comes in, and this is my fun job. So if you bring a dog into the United States for what they call commercial resale, which they include in that adoption for a fee, it doesn't matter if it's a nonprofit or a charity rehoming organization. If it's an adoption for a fee, you have to get an import permit. And so this is the first step in the import permit. This is live dog import health and rabies certificate. And as you can see, I'm the importer on all of these forms because I'm the person that applies for the import permit. And there's the dog's name and his tattoos, color. We say you can have any color Irish Greyhound you want as long as they're black, but that's not completely true. But a lot of them are black. Date of birth, gender, all the vaccinations they've had, the rabies vaccination, and the USDA is very exacting about these things. You can't leave anything out. If you get an expiration date wrong, they'll bounce it back to you. So it's then signed by the vet, and the folks in Ireland email these to me, and then I go and take those and apply on the USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, APHIS, for an import permit. So this is their online platform that you go to apply. If you get USDA approval, this is what they issue. It's an import permit. This is trying to remember where this is 12. This is the max that we can get on one airplane, is 12 Greyhounds. And this, you can see, this is just the first page. This is just to give you an example of what it looks like. This shows you all the information that we've inputted about the dogs, their names, their microchip numbers, etc. And then on the subsequent pages, it'll have the itinerary, where they're flying from, the flight number, and what we call the delivery recipient is. The delivery recipient is a representative of the receiving group who's actually in charge of getting the dogs in and getting the paperwork and being in touch with the customs brokers, etc. So that's what an import permit looks like. Then we bring in the customs broker. You have to have, just like people have to be cleared through customs, so do dogs. And so we have found that it's best to get a customs broker so that we don't have to go to the customs office at the airport on the day of arrival. They clear the dogs through. This is one of the national firms that a lot of the receiving groups use. They're actually here in Atlanta, but other groups you can use any customs broker you want to. But we've just found this really relieves a lot of the stress on the day of arrival. If they've already got it handled, the dogs are already cleared by the time the plane lands, and it just makes things a lot easier. And the next step, a day or two before the dogs board the plane, they have to be given fit to fly certificates. This is a requirement of the airlines. As you can see, it basically says a vet has examined the dog, he's verified the microchip, and he's found to be in good condition and can fly. Basically, he's good to go. We have had a couple of dogs that have been held back, usually at the suggestion of the IRGT, because he had a cough, or he had one of them had run around in the foster home and barked up his pad, so it wasn't thought that he should fly. So anyway, they do check them very thoroughly, and they issue the fit to fly letters a day or two before the scheduled flight. Then the airway bill. This is the dog's boarding pass. This is something that's required by the airline. And as you can see, this is a typical airway bill. It has all the flight information on it, 12 live Greyhounds, etc. This is one coming into Atlanta. The airline, the airport from which they are departing, etc. So that's this is how they can't get on the plane without this. This is their boarding pass. Okay, so how do they go? This is the first leg of the Greyhound transport. They're over in Ireland. The dogs that have been marked for the program are kept in foster homes or foster facilities, and the van driver goes around and collects the the dogs that are scheduled to fly. This is one of the vans that they travel in. I think this one can hold 20 or 24, something like that. But they've got compartments in there, and they're collected, and this is their bus to go over on the ferry, which you're going to see next, to England. So this is a typical car ferry that they go in. The dogs stay in the vehicle while they're on the ferry. They depart here from, I hope everybody can see my arrow, from the Rosslare Europort, and they come in here. The van, they unload the van and all the other vehicles, and then the van drives across England to most of the time to London Heathrow Airport. Now you may ask, why aren't we flying them from straight from Ireland, from Dublin or maybe Shannon? Well, it's a matter of logistics. Aer Lingus, which is the national airline of Ireland and flies most of the nonstops directly from Dublin to the American airports, they fly mostly Airbus aircraft. And the Airbus the cargo spaces are plenty big enough for the crates, but the hatchway into the cargo space isn't. You're going to see just in a minute, these crates are huge, and they won't fit through the hatch of the Airbus planes. So that's why we don't fly them from Ireland. It's because of the size of the aircraft cargo openings. So in any event, they cross the Irish Sea. They drive from the landing point here to either Heathrow or Gatwick, which are the two London airports. So when they get to, most of them come from Heathrow. The only ones going from Gatwick are the ones that go to Tampa. For some reason, that's just the routing of the flights. So they typically come over the night before the flight, and they are checked in here at the Heathrow Animal Reception Center. I couldn't find a picture of a attendant with a Greyhound, so I got this little fluffy guy here. But if you're really interested in this, there's a couple of good videos on it on YouTube. They actually did a TV program on it one time, and they keep everything. They keep reptiles, they keep birds of prey. Dogs and cats obviously are the most common, but this is where they spend the night. You can see here, they bring them in through on the van. Here, they close the doors before they get them out, and then they check them into these various kennels for overnight. Okay, we fly two airlines. I told you a little bit about why Aer Lingus doesn't fly them from Dublin or Shannon. And we wish Delta Airlines, another American airline, would fly them, but they're currently on a COVID-related hiatus on flying dogs and cargo. We're trying to get them to work on it. We've got one of our GPA Atlanta board members is a Delta pilot, and I'm constantly asking her to meet with the CEO of Delta and persuade him to let dogs fly again on Delta. But she says, yeah, I'll do that next week. So anyway, obviously that's not going to happen right now. So anyway, what we fly is American flies and British Airways. And these two airliners are Boeing 777s. And this is the cargo space of a typical Boeing 777. Every time on social media a topic comes up about flying Greyhounds, oh, it's terrible, I would never fly a Greyhound, it's that horrible cargo space, et cetera, et cetera. Well, as you can see here, it's bright and airy, and it's lighted, and it's climate controlled, heated and air conditioned, et cetera. So this is where they fly. They're put in on what are called pallets. They're not the pallets that you and I think of, the wooden pallets, but the crates are all strapped down to this pallet device. Then they're loaded 6 at a time, and then the pallets are then strapped down inside the cargo hold so that they will be secure in there. And let's see, okay. Arrival. There's a pallet right there. That one's got 4 crates on it. You can see on the left there. And you can see the dogs. They've got water, and they've got a water bowl and a food bowl in there. And you can see how big these crates are. They're huge. We call them travel condos. They're brand new wood. They're really nicely built. The dogs have bedding inside there, and they have water available to them all the time. So that'll give you an idea of the size. They can stand up, etc. We have to use these crates. The airlines will not permit what some people call very kennels, what other people call airline kennels, because even the biggest one, what's called the 700, is not big enough for a greyhound to stand up with his head fully extended. So they insist on these big wood crates. Whoops. Let's see. Let's go back to that. Find my arrow here. This is a typical uncrating. These 2 pictures were actually taken in Atlanta. You can see the crates get lined up, brought in here. We close all the cargo terminal doors before we let any dogs out, and then we bring them out one by one, get the collars on them, etc., and check them off. So that's welcome to America. Then these crates we have to do something with the travel condos, and so you can't just leave them at the air cargo terminal. And as you can see, I've tried to give you some scale here. They're huge, and various groups have done various things with them. One group has repurposed the wood and made shelves and that sort of thing, and then sold them as a fundraiser. And that works really nice. This is our crate disposer in Atlanta. He's a farmer, and he'll come get every crate we ask him to come get. And so he uses them. He raises goats and chickens, and he uses them. He turns them into either for goat transport or for chicken coops. So they do get repurposed. We try to keep any of them out of landfills, etc. Some groups give them away to other animal rescue groups for their use. So we've had a pretty good luck with getting them repurposed. We always try to get a nice arrival photo. On your left, there's the Seattle group. And all these dogs are met at air cargo terminals. They're not met at the airport itself. It's always near the airport, but it's not the airport itself. So here in Seattle, American Airlines has an actual, they have their own cargo terminal, air cargo terminal. Some airlines like British Airways, they use other companies to be their air cargo terminal. In Atlanta, for example, I think in Tampa as well. So here's the Seattle group on the right, Chicago group. I'm sorry, Seattle on the left, Chicago on the right. But as you can see, the dogs are in great shape. It's amazing how unanxious they are when they arrive. They just step out of the crates like they own the place, and they want to be out where they can relieve themselves pretty quickly. We've had one step out, and as soon as his feet hit the concrete in the air cargo terminal, he kind of decided it was time to go. So he let loose right there. But anyway, they all arrived in quite good shape. Then we have to satisfy the USDA again. So let me tell you a little story about that. There's a disease that affects pigs. It only affects pigs, called African swine fever. Dogs can't get it. People can't get it. If a pig dies of African swine fever, you can even eat the pork that comes from the pig, and it won't hurt anybody. But it's a tick-borne disease, and since dogs can have ticks on them, we've never found a tick on an Irish Greyhound, by the way, nor to our knowledge is an Irish Greyhound going to any pig farms. But nevertheless, because of that, Ireland is a country that's been marked by the USDA as having the presence of African swine fever. So you have to bathe the dogs within 2 calendar days of their arrival. And then you have to, let's see if I've got the form here. Oh no, here we go. And then within 2 business days of their arrival, we have to fill out another USDA form in which the bathers have signed the date on which they bathe the dogs. You list all the dogs once again, and then you upload that document to the USDA platform. So the government paperwork doesn't stop when the dogs arrive. So that's the African swine fever. I think most groups would probably bathe dogs anyway, but we have to make sure it gets done within 2 days, and they have to send more documents to me by email. So that's the last bit of satisfying of the USDA that we have to do with the Irish Greyhound. Now, an often asked question we get is, are Irish Greyhounds different? The short answer is no. They can be a little stockier sometimes because they have more coursing. They're closer to the coursing bloodlines than our American Greyhounds. So let me tell you a couple of stories about these 2 Greyhounds that are pictured here. The one on the left is an Irish coursing Greyhound. We do get the occasional coursing Greyhound in the group, and his name is Heimdall. I'm told that's a character from a movie, but I don't know which one. This is one of our GPA Atlanta volunteers. Her name is Megan McGrath. And if you know your Greyhound history, you know who Master McGrath was. He was the first Irish Greyhound to win the Waterloo Cup. So when I found out we had an Irish Greyhound coming to Atlanta, I said, Megan, you have to pose with an Irish coursing Greyhound. A McGrath with an Irish coursing Greyhound is just perfect. So this guy was about 85 pounds. He's probably one of the bigger ones, biggest ones that have come. And this one is probably one of the smallest ones. This little girl's name was Mary from Moreau, and that's not a problem with the photograph. She's actually speckled like that. And she's about 48 pounds. And our club holds lure coursing trials in the fall and winter. And we have a fun run time after the regular competition where anybody that wants to can bring their Greyhound out to run a short straight on the drag lure. And so the folks that adopted Mary from Moreau brought her out. And when I first saw her, I had forgotten about this little Greyhound we brought into Atlanta. I thought she was a big whippet. So she ran a wonderful straight and had a big time doing it. You can see her all stretched out there. So that's kind of the, you know, they run the gamut in terms of size. Most of them are the racers. The males are in the 70s. The females are in the 50s or low 60s. Temperament-wise, absolutely no different at all. Sweet, biddable, companionable. They're really no different at all. They'll have a little bit more luxurious coat. They spend more time outside. They come in at night in the kennels where they live with their trainers. But during the day, they're turned out in grass paddocks. And so they tend to spend more time outside. And of course, obviously, it's cooler in Ireland than it is here for the most part. So they tend to grow a little bit more luxurious coats, thicker. And they take a little time when they come over here to get used to our American heat and humidity. So we always tell adopters, don't give them a few months before you really let them run and go crazy, because they'll take some time to get used to it. That's really about the only difference. Why we do this? Here's why we do this. These smiling faces are the reason we do this. I think I recognize that person in the lower right-hand corner there from Greyhound Options, but this is why we do it. I call it the win-win-win proposition. It's a win for the Greyhounds themselves. It's a win for the breed because of the partnership between racing and the adoption community, and it's a win for the people that have the Greyhounds in their lives.